And we're going to say a big warm welcome to this exploration of the becoming of business. The reason I'm so super excited about today is that we're making that important shift. We're crossing the threshold from having collected wisdom to now really understanding what the heck are we going to do with all this wisdom that we have? How on earth can we implement this in business? So we're really going from the what to the how. And there are so many things that we could explore within this. And perhaps first, being that I know most of you have taken part of either as a wisdom speaker or as a wisdom speaker listener from the first round of the Becoming of Business, etc., and your lives, of course. Perhaps a great way to start is to share around the room and the space that forms between us what wisdom it is that sticks out for you, that that you feel extra compelled to bring into this conversation. There might be something that has stuck out in your life, or and greetings from New York City here with the sirens in the background. What is it that has been that sticks out in your mind? Or maybe, you know how the mind works, it just highlights certain things that you hear. And let's see what kind of wisdom that we want to bring into the space today. It doesn't mean that we forget about all the other wisdom. I just thought it would be great to highlight what comes up for us. And who would like to start? Anything that sticks out? All right, Jennifer, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to jump in with this one. I spent 18 years of my career really working with executive boards looking to either deliver mega projects or to upskill, develop their teams, their executive teams. And it was very consistent that the same challenges would come up irrelevant of the industry that they were in. And it was part of my driving force to actually change careers and move away from more of the sort of headhunting and recruitment side of things into actually transforming cultures. And for me, the most prominent thing that sticks out that I'd like to share is that I actually think that we need to redefine what leadership is. For me, you look at leadership development programs in many of the companies I worked with, whether they were FTSE companies, fortune companies, entrepreneurs, client organizations that were government owned. And there was this huge push for leaders to follow a process that somebody else created, normally many years ago. And everything was about the extrinsic, it was about the external world. And for me, redefining leadership is about understanding that it's an inside job. First of all, mastering your own mind, understanding who you are, understanding your values, your purpose, your thinking preferences, and therefore where your own blind spots are, so that you know as a leader where you need to develop or where you need to flex your style. Was super important for me. So I think we have a huge emphasis on being a leader and following somebody else's impression or understanding of what leadership is. And for me, it's about the inner work, as with everything, so within as without. So for me, I think we need to do some serious work around what leadership development actually is and redefine what leadership is within business.
And I know you, Allyson, you've spent many decades in uniform, even being a general in the U.S. Army and in the National Guard.
It's a National Guard, the Air Force.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the Air Force and National Guard. Leadership is definitely an expertise of yours, and you come with a unique perspective, being that you come from the military, known for its leadership strength and perhaps leadership force. And you spoke very, very, I think, profoundly and eloquently into the space in the first round when it comes to leadership. Do you think that the leadership expertise that we actually do get from the armed forces is something that could be helpful in the way that we can transform and rethinking the way leadership really functions
Yeah.
in a group?
So as I listened to what Jennifer said, much of it is what the military teaches you to do, and part of it is, although there's a structure, and they go through the formal part, they encourage you to learn where your strengths and weaknesses are so you can adapt accordingly. Because not every situation requires a certain kind of leader, and maybe you don't have those skills, so maybe you need to go get them. And so in terms of, and I think that's the strength that some people, when they reach out to someone who has been in uniform, is looking for, is they will likely know how to adapt to whatever situation is presented to them, and surround themselves with people that don't have what they have. And part of that is knowing innately, or from experience, what you're good at and what you're not good at, and letting your ego, that giant ego that we have, we need to set it aside. And we do see people that when they struggle with the ego, how it comes into play in a detrimental way in terms of your ability to lead. And I wouldn't say in the best fashion, because again, it's about adapting. And if you can't adapt to whatever situation, it is likely that you will not be as successful for that organization as it needs to be.
So I know that Adam has a million thoughts on this because because there's an
2 million.
obvious tug here between leading from fear and ego and leading from love. And what would you like to put into the space? I can feel that you have the things that need to be said.
Thank you for feeling me, Linda. That's great. Much needs to be said, and I think that's spot on, that yes, we need to reimagine leadership, rethink leadership, redefine it, all the re's, most certainly. And I'm consistently reminded, where it's really up for me quite a bit is, and really what I'm asking in some of the work I'm doing with leaders and individuals and entrepreneurs and whatnot, is are you building a new model that's going to make your old model obsolete? And we think top to bottom leadership, bottom to top leadership. Now we need to really think, are we building a new model of leadership, top to bottom and bottom to top? So what I'm focused on is really, taking that Bucky Fuller wisdom of making that old model obsolete and bringing in a new optics to what I see as genius leadership. And genius leaders see in a 360 way. So I'm focused right now on really creating a new model around leadership, genius leadership, that focuses on a 360 style of leadership. In other words, if you had a ball, you would have leadership from top to bottom, from side to side, and all around. And I won't get into a lot of the specifics, but what I have found most importantly is that it's not just simply a learning process or a retraining process or a reimagining process of leadership. It's very much an unlearning process. So it's really taking it apart, actually, and not leaving anything unscathed in that process. And Jennifer put forth a great point, and that is really, it is inside out. And it really involves leadership that is no longer of an individual or two or three or four. It's really the whole of that, bringing a 360 view into a company or a team. So I'm at that place now looking at, how do we create new models in everything I'm doing? Are we creating a new model here that's making our old model obsolete? And I think that's key, is to keep checking in with that piece as we redefine leadership into genius leadership that I see as brings a 360 perspective. So I hope that offers a few ideas and thoughts to spark a further conversation. Love to hear more from everybody else.
It certainly does. And there's something about this, we're sitting here, and I think that all of us can feel, from whatever walk of life we come from, if we've had a certain level of awakening to something larger, we all nod our heads. It's like, yep, this is what we need. It doesn't matter if it's military, business, governmental, what have you, religious. But my question is still, with this wisdom that we're standing on, if we're still in that space of exploring that wisdom, how do we even inspire people to wanting to shift models? What is it that we can do? And Sunny, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything, but I know that you work in male-dominated, you've been in a male-dominated industry for a long time, and then you have this very spiritual desire for implementing the ethics and the sense of spirituality. What do you feel when it comes to, and it's not so much about convincing or twisting anyone's arm, but have you seen anything in that space? If we all agree, yes, there needs to be a new model, can you speak into what that model would look like for you in terms of how you have seen things land? I know it's a big question, but any thread you want to pull there would be so awesome.
For me, it's I would consider myself in the practice periods, and when I do that, it gives me grace and compassion for myself to not try to be, you did it just right, you did it perfect, but more compassion, knowing that I'm in the practice period, and I feel like that's probably going to go on for a long time. But the key for me, I guess I can take back a little bit to the what wisdom that sticks to me. It kind of answer this questions as well, tries to this, is be bold to be kind. And to Jennifer's and Adam's points of how do you do that? How do you know this is not just your opinion, that, at any given time we are tasked to make decisions and choices. And there are many choices. Some may not be even on the table. We have to make different choices. And that's when the practice of meditations and listening inward and believing in intuitions, again, it takes practice, and allow the voice inside to guide what it is that it means to be bold, to be kind, what it means to lead from the inside. And that decision, to the best of your practiced ability, keep practicing every day, that you know and feel, at least at the time, to your highest knowledge at the time, that is the best for all. And it takes support groups, and it takes anchored to do that. I do find myself challenged in times where, do I really want to go this route, which is probably not supported and against everything else that is being guided in the pace. So that's where the discipline of practice, just go in and listen and trust in those decisions. Does that answer your
Thank you
question? That's
so
where I am. Yeah.
It's so perfect. It's so perfect. And I was kind of feeling how Laurence was leading into this. And you're alluding to some of what I would say words that would resonate with what I know about Laurence. And one of them is connection. It just sounds like there needs to be a connection to something bigger. There needs to be a different connection between people, a different connection with self. And what would you like to bring into this space, Laurence?
Well, connection with something bigger for sure. New models for sure. And new models have to be to me, the foundation of new models, it has to be unique and it has to be authentic and it has to be connected to the earth. And it's and the idea that I've always had is I come from the entertainment industry, is to build an entertainment company as a new model, an entertainment company modeled for the 21st century, so that celebrates the diversity of our planet in a new spirit of engagement and cooperation. And it's about making, you can reach a lot of people with a hit record or a hit movie. And all of the elements have that wisdom. The idea is, how do we, Linda and I and other people talk about this all the time, how do we work outside the choir? How do we preach, get it outside the choir? Because everybody here understands, what we're talking about, but how do you get it outside? And that's one way to get it out. And Rhythms of the Globe is really founded on alchemy and mysticism. It's with and it's that wisdom, and we've all studied this wisdom. I've studied it for a long time, and that's a very broad statement, a broad category. But again, we all sort of know what we're talking about, and Linda and I have talked about it before. So it brings this wisdom out with a new model. So Rhythms of the Globe for example, is decentralized. There's no Rhythms of the Globe Ghana, Rhythms of the Globe Japan are all locally owned. And the main company owns a little bit of stock, but they're all locally owned. So it's really decentralized. It's sort of like almost like a blockchain idea. So the Rhythms of the Globe, all the Rhythms of the Globe cafes around the world are different. Even the Rhythms of the Globe cafes in New York City will be different. Maybe at Times Square, it's immersive media, and Lower East Side is different, and Harlem is different. So it's about culture. The Poetry Slam for Peace, which is coming on in Saturday, as I mentioned, it has those same elements. It's artists from around the world reflecting on the many shapes that connect with shaping peace together. There's not just one shape, there are many shapes. And that's what Rhythms of the Globe is about. And it's to bring that out into the world, because it's to combine the evolving lifestyles of the 21st century into seamless online and offline experiences to bring authenticity, create a personality, and convey a message. And the message is about connection, which is was your question when we started. So it's about that connection. And there's talent, amazing talent all over the world.
Yeah, Linda, if I could chime on to what came to mind as Laurence was talking, the environment that we have today is so shifted with this pandemic, and the importance of this transformational kind of leadership from the inside out in order to be able to connect to people across mediums, the water, Zoom or whatever. And it has to be authentic if you're going to create that connection, right? And how do you do that and build a business and create prosperity, or build a movement and create prosperity and move it forward in these when you have all these dynamics that are challenging you in that connection. So again, and I go back to what said earlier about, that practice internally to build that strength that you have so that you can listen and know when it's not working and when you don't feel it intuitively or, you know, or even cognitively, when you don't feel it happening.
So many things that come to everybody's mind, and thank you everybody for sharing, and let's continue sharing here, because there's so much that we're folding into this room that's hitting on some things that and it's not so much that we agree on so many things. It's just we've all, with our different awakening paths, have come to sensing into a knowing that's now ready to be known. But then, of course, we're also in this exploration, we're also seeing that there are, well, wait a minute, how are we going to motivate? Businesses today run on money. You know, it's the biggest social platform in the world, but we show up because, you know, money. So this is probably just 80% true, but to a large extent, that's always the structure and the so-called bottom line. And so it's so interesting to see not only that Laurence is doing this decentralized model, but I'm sure that we've all heard about circular economies, and that different companies come together to actually create a circular, you know, so you have you know, your footprint is eradicated when it comes to any kind of abuse on Mother Earth. There's all these fairness principles. And so there are these circular efforts that are being made, which I find fascinating to research. Another thing that I have seen that I will actually post as part of the wisdom for the becoming of business is a wonderful woman whose name escapes me right now, but she's talking about the donut. And the donut is another new model where all these different functions and areas, so you have the environment, you have equality, you have all these different things around in this donut, and you can be in the donut and you can be outside the donut, and this is a warning sign and the other is a warning sign. So you want to be inside the actual meat of the donut. And there are several countries in Europe that have now adopted this model of the donut, which is a funny word, but it's a good visual, and I will post that as part of this, because it's when we sit here and talking about, hey, let's create new models. We need new models for leadership, as we've already talked into this space about. We also need new models we need new models for the whole process, the whole chain, the whole thinking, you know. And of course it needs to start with whole brain, whole heart, coherence. You know, it's not to say that it doesn't start from the inside, but you can't even come up with a concept of the donut if you haven't done your inner work. You know. And so sometimes I have found, although I'm a big believer that it starts from the inside and goes out, there is a zigzagging in our growth, where sometimes when we're part of something that as a structure works, we do get inspired to do more work on the inside. So I don't think that we need to become complete enlightened Buddhas and then go in and do the good work in business. I think that we should be very, because then I'd be booted out right away, you know, that we are patient with one another in the way that we evolve and taking it step by step. So anyone wants to comment on any of these models or anything else that you have seen or experienced that actually starts bringing this wisdom into action?
Yeah, I don't want to wait until I'm enlightened to do this. You're right.
Amen,
that's why you're here now, Laurence. You're ready to go.
I'm ready. Yeah, exactly.
I'll chime in a little bit, because I've recently become involved in a impact fund that's a circular economy fund, and I'm really intrigued with it, and because the innovation that's in these companies that they're looking at are stunning. For example, there's a company that does stone paper. and it reduces, not only the impact going in, about 60% in terms of production, but it also, the longevity of what it produces is, tenfold of what otherwise would be. So it's quite powerful, and it's really an exciting space. So I'm glad you did mention it. And I think that donut is a good image, because one of the things I think we can look at in building new models is really looking at nature as a model herself, biomimicry, and looking at how we come into symbiosis with nature's, divine design, nature's genius, whatever you want to call her wisdom as well. And that donut is an imagery of nature's wisdom, which is more focused on toroidal flow. So if a toroid is energetic flow, like you imagine the earth, energy comes in and it circulates through the center, through the core of the earth. So it is a great model to start looking at. And it's very exciting to see how that's being applied in business, and the kind of impacts it's starting to make, really in particular in terms of carbon imprint. So it's an exciting area, and I look forward to maybe hearing more from others on this or exploring more on this, because I think it's relevant to everything that we're doing, in leadership in particular, is because it's not about sustainability anymore of our companies, or sustainability, trying to sustain our leadership positions. It's really about adapting in a new way to a new leadership model. And that toroidal, that donut, is very applicable. And it's a great biomimicry of what I think she brings, nature, to this proposition for further discussion of new models, new leadership, and whatnot.
Yeah, I totally agree, Adam. I think for me, I always bring it back to all businesses are created and run on thinking. So without somebody having a thought, creating that business, and then being able to communicate the concept of that business wouldn't exist. So when it comes to new models and new leadership, I think we have incredible human beings on this planet that absolutely know how to come up with these solutions. But a lot of the time, we haven't promoted within leadership that it is connection to self first. And so a lot of us are walking around with injected values from corporations, media, parents, education, and don't really understand who we are in our own value system. So I went really deep into axiology, which is the study of value and worth, and is what essentially all of us are intrinsically driven by. So we have a set of values in our subconscious mind, and some of us our conscious mind, but we are driven subconsciously by a value system that traditionally was created through voids in childhood. And so what happens is we don't come into authenticity of who we really are, because nobody in this world is promoting that connection to self first. So for example, we're not taught to embody the male and the masculine and the feminine energy within inside us. And we're certainly not promoting to our executive male leaders that you need to embody more of your feminine energy. So we're never going to transcend gender until we can own that inside of us. But the most important part of what I'm trying to get across here is businesses come up with a set of values because it's the done thing, right? What are your values? And if your employees can recite them, then tick, tick, tick. And actually businesses can't have values. Humans have values. And if we can empower people individually to understand what their value system is, I mean, their highest values, not the social idealisms, but the things they don't have to be paid to do. It's so intrinsic within us that most of us come up with things that we perceive like honesty and integrity and all of these things, and they're great, wonderful things, but they're not our intrinsic value system. They're not the things that our subconscious mind drives us to do on a daily basis to be fulfilled. And the minute that we can get to the place of understanding our values and our thinking, and we align that to the roles that we're in business, that's when we don't need external motivation like money, because we're waking up every morning already needing to fulfill a value system. So I think there's some work that's to be done with connection to self first, understanding what our value systems are before we go and then get placed into a role in a business that projects onto us, these are the values that you live by. You know, it just doesn't work like that. So for me, connection to self first, definitely. And then I believe that those models will come through people being able to co-create. And when we understand that we all have different values, it's like a fingerprint, there is no one in the same. As leaders, we can empower people to fulfill their purpose and value system within the role, within the business. So everybody's on a mission, but they're fulfilling their values individually. And I believe we can co-create and get into group flow in totally different ways with just a slight shift. One of my mentors works with a very large business out in China, and we're talking multi-billion pound company, and simply by shifting to understanding values of individuals and leadership, their profit went up multiple billions within a year, which wasn't really the aim of the game with what the business was doing. But naturally, profitability, sustainability, innovation, curiosity, all these things increase when we're empowered to feel psychologically safe with who we are and what our values are. And that for me will be a huge shift in leadership within business.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And yes, go ahead, Laurence, of course.
Yeah. No, I've come to understand that the people that I want to work with are the people that already know what I'm talking about, and that have their own vision.
So that we find strength from somewhere completely different. We find a different spot than money. And I'm not saying that money isn't good. I'm saying that money is just an energy that we have been programmed to be single-handedly focused on. And there's so much more that we can utilize within ourselves and within the world than just having that be the one. And of course, the irony with many of these things is that the more we do this kind of work, strangely, money show up. You know, that's really
well, if you want to build a sustainable business, you have to make money.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. So, and that's another thing, you know, we're talking a lot about inner work, and there's a lot of fears. There's a lot of programming that works against us doing anything from co-creating or having any kind of abundance or wealth or anything like that, because of the fears that it's almost like we have been hearing and receiving things that don't belong to us. So this inner work is just absolutely crucial. And there's no coincidence that my first book was called Inner Business. But Linda, you haven't written your second book yet. No, I'm writing it right now. So I'm referring it to it as my first book. But yes, the inner business does need to be in order for us to have any kind of outer business that's going to fulfill us. And I keep saying that to those who want to listen, that you can't take anything from someone else that's in your heart. If you start with any request in the world in your heart, then you're not taking it from anyone else. And it's because we're going to have very different audiences listening to this. We're going to have entrepreneurs who actually feel that it's hard to make money. It's hard to be successful because they constantly think about the good of everybody else. And then we're going to have bigger companies that may be very in the trenches of what we've all learned in business, which is that profit comes first. You know, screw the rest. And Jennifer and I was on a panel the other day getting interviewed about the importance of women taking, stepping in fully into leadership, et cetera. And we pretty quickly took it out of a gender discussion and into sort of, let's think about this in a bigger way. But as I was preparing for that talk, I was thinking about that there is something very pornographic about the way that we've been running the business world so far. pornography means that you're exploiting a part of something or someone. You don't take the whole person into account. And so instead of looking at someone's wholeness, you're exploiting the one aspect and very often objectifying and sexualizing. I feel that there's something pornographic, the way that we've been raised up in business, that it's okay to rape and plunder Mother Earth because we're doing the right thing. You know, our shareholders are happy because we are meeting and maybe even excelling in the numbers going back. And that's where I am concerned about this shift, where I'm so with Laurence about how do we start preaching outside the choir? And of course, we're not here to preach, but we are here to explore and co-create together with more people. And so this becomes then the very important question: how do we make that even attractive? Like, how do we make that shift possible with more people faster? Yes, Laurence, let me know.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Yes, okay. Rock and roll. I'm going to write that down. Rock and roll. Any other? I think that's a terrific suggestion. And I think that music is actually one of those universal languages that can inspire people from anywhere. What else? What else do we have? Yes, go ahead.
When people are inspired, when they are empowered, I'm going to quote Jennifer, because I've worked on this every day. Every time I meet someone, it doesn't matter who I'm meeting with, in person or in businesses, when they are, ourselves included, empowered to feel psychologically safe, that's when their inspired actions and decisions will come out. And I have full trust that those decisions would act in a way that is good for Earth as well.
It's a super interesting topic that I've gone down many rabbit holes around psychological safety, especially after Google's Project Aristotle came out. And the one thing I keep coming back to is you can't actually make somebody feel psychologically safe, and you can't make somebody trust other people until they are psychologically safe in themselves and have trust with themselves. And where we struggle with that is that this education system, the way that the world has moved, social idealisms projected onto us through media, parents, education, business, it's created an inability for people to understand who they really are in the world, what their values, their intrinsic values really are, and therefore what their purpose is. So we put these masks on, you know, we have a wardrobe for our work self, and we have a wardrobe for our personal self, and we put on this mask when we're a parent, and then this other mask when we're out socially. And so until we can integrate and understand our whole self, how can we be psychologically safe? Because we're not showing up authentically. Now, the subconscious mind is super powerful, and you will always try and protect yourself from getting caught out. So until we are actually 100% in knowing of our values, and I mean our true values, not projected onto us, but those voids that were created and who we really are. So where we spend our money, where we spend our time, the things that we don't have to be persuaded to do, and many other questions that we go through to determine these. Until we understand our values and we can honestly understand our purpose, how can we be psychologically safe? And this is a big challenge for me, because I specialize in conscious cultures and in creating an environment, because language and environment, obviously epigenetics are a huge part to play as well in how people show up, and communication, neurochemistry comes into this. But I hate to keep banging on about it, but until we have that connection with self, I don't believe we can create psychological safety, because there's always that, what if we say something wrong, or what if we don't today, or are we going to get caught out? Are we a fraud? You know, all of this imposter syndrome, which isn't even a real thing anyway, because if we were an imposter, obviously we would be thinking about being an imposter, but Until we can get to a place of authenticity and trust within self, I think it's incredibly difficult to shift business and business cultures. And that's why I believe we need to redefine leadership and actually start looking at value hierarchy. Our highest values have come from our voids, and we will do anything to fulfill them. When we're in our highest values, we have huge energy. We don't have to be paid to do anything when we're in our values. When I'm studying anything about the brain, or I'm going into geek mode, nobody needs to pay me to do that. I do it because it's my highest value. And the problem that we've got is that businesses go out thinking we need this and we need that, and we have to have a sticking plaster over here because the CEO's just left. And so it's all about what they determine the business needs and how people need to fit into the business values. We got this the wrong way around. We got it twisted. We have it twisted. And until we can start looking at how do we align the individual's values to the role that the business requires, and are we on the same mission, and do we have the same purpose, then we're going to struggle. And that's where in 18 years of working with thousands of companies, it was the same challenge time and time again. We got it twisted, like with many things at the moment in this world. We have it the wrong way around.
Well, one way to do it is to build new companies, to build new models.
Absolutely.
So you can really show people how it can work.
Yeah.
And I think the role modeling idea that you're bringing up, Laurence, is such an important part of it, and actually lifting up companies that it works for. And that might be a really huge note to self here for the becoming of business, to actually showcase and not tell people what to do, but inspire them by showing what other people have done and what they are enjoying as a result of it, right?
So let's take that for a moment, Linda, because role modeling's a bit of the old model.
Yeah.
It's really the old tree that's on fire. So let's just say whole modeling. So like Jennifer's position, we're whole. We're coming from a place of that inner knowing, that deeper inner trust of safety within self. And so I like the idea of whole modeling, and as much as anything else, because it's certainly obviously transcendent of any gender or any real defined thing. And so I sense that, yeah, this is what we're here to discuss very deeply, about how we're whole modeling, new leadership, new models, new ideas, new thoughts. So no doubt we're brought the collective wisdom together. And I think the question that's posed is, how do we create the invitation to invite others that seemingly are in the role models and living in the old paradigm, the old tree that's on fire? How do we invite them to come into a new meeting place, a new place of interconnection? And I'm not so sure that it's how are we getting to the outside the choir? I think that it's really perhaps maybe it's within the choir, but the choir meaning, what is it that we're all holding together? We're all the choir, all of us. There's nothing that's outside of that. So if we take some, say, of our teachings from the Course of Miracles, for example, which you've worked so much with over the years, is it's the invitation and that inspiration that invites people into that place within the choir in and of itself, and the welcoming of those to come in so they can feel safe, like Jennifer's before, they can feel trusted, and they can come into that inspiring force. So I don't know exactly where I'm going with that, but I just wanted to share a little bit about home modeling, invitational meeting place where people can say, I'm on board.
Right. Yeah, and I could have used the word broadcast instead of role model. This is the function of living in my second language, but it is actually a prompt for the becoming of business to actually be a place where you can go and get inspired, because there are broadcast, and if someone thinks about that as role modeling or not, that's either way is fine by me. But the whole modeling is the big point, that it's a whole brain, whole heart, whole system, whole earth, and it is a whole humanity.
Well, it's really important, and I think the languaging, we have such an issue with languaging here in the choir, so to speak. We're still saying consciousness and unconsciousness. It's very implied that if you don't get that you're unconscious.
Exactly, which is so rude.
I hear it from business people that want to come in. They want to come in and explore, but they almost a little bit alienated, a little bit caught off guard. Males are threatened by females. It's still old stuff. So I think it's that invitation into the whole. Why not be part of everything?
Right. No, and I think that there's something about the and of course there's a sloppiness in the expression of preaching to the choir. Of course, preaching is wrong, and the choir is kind of wrong too. But there is something to be said about people who are ready to hear these kinds of things, and there is something to be said about those who. And I believe you me, they are part of my audiences worldwide. They are not willing to hear that there's anything else going on than the bottom line. Everything else is just bullshit. And it's so, and I'm not saying that we should go all the way out there to try to invite them all the time. And we're not gonna focus on those who are resistant. Of course not. There is there's such a juicy population in between that we can speak to and be inviting towards, and it almost feels like we need a separate session on language alone.
Neurochemistry, big,
right? Yeah.
huge.
This is a big passion area of Jennifer's, and I think a lot of us, because
I would be up for that for sure.
Yeah,
Conversational intelligence, yeah, for sure. It's Linda, we're both on the same page with that, right?
yes. Hey Jennifer, can't you tell the rest of the group where collaboration comes from? It's such a buzzword and we all should collaborate, and then it turns out Jennifer says
No, well, I was very fortunate to study under somebody called Judith Glaser, who was the creator of something called conversational intelligence. So very much neurochemistry based, and looking at everything from epigenetics, but all the way through to how language and environment switches on and off DNA, and then how chemicals are released in the brain with certain words and language. And I had to very quickly shift from collaboration to co-creation, because she would go in on me, because actually the word collaboration was developed after the war, and it meant to cohort with the enemy. And even if we don't know this now consciously, obviously we know everything is energy and ancestral and energetic. And so she was very, very up on this stuff. Unfortunately, she passed away just before I certified. I did certify. This is another rabbit hole I went down. But it absolutely fascinated me, and the hacks that we can give leaders before meetings, even the language of how they set a meeting, how words are written in emails, feedback, just it's such a huge area. I won't geek off with you right now, but whole brain thinking is a huge part. So understanding cognitive diversity, thought diversity, and the need for it, not just the male, female, sort of left brain, right brain thing. It transcends way beyond that. But neurochemistry is for sure a huge one. So the language that we use, I actually think we can reach these people with where they're at a lot easier than we believe. You look at the statistics of flow, right? Flow psychology, group flow. We're talking about 500% increase in productivity per person per day. Creativity, learning capacity, 470% increase. We can speak to people with where they're at, talking about bottom line and profit and shareholders through the language that they need it to be. We just have to be a little bit stealth mode on them, bringing them in and waking them up. And that's generally what tends to happen, because you take them into a deeper place. But if we need to speak to them about, let's be honest, we're all driven by a small number of things, and leaving a legacy is a huge part of it. Autonomy, is another. When we can speak to people in these basic principles, but teach them that to do this, it doesn't mean we're not going to keep the stakeholders and shareholders happy, or that, you've got to commit all your time to this and you're not going to make any profit. When we can link the two, because they're not isolated from one another, as we all know, when we get super clear on our purpose and our values, and we're adding value into the world through a business vehicle. I mean, a business, it's just a vehicle. It's just a collection of people who think, who have values, and all actually fundamentally, unless, there's a very small percentage of people on this planet who do have the difficulties of not operating as we all do as humans. There are very few psychopaths truly on this planet, and most people are driven by the need to connect, co-create, leave a legacy, actually feel like they have autonomy over their own life and add impact. So if we can speak to them with where they're at, which I believe that we can through neurochemistry, through changing the conversation, and empowering them to have that connection with self, and then believe that we're going to increase profits and impact and all of these things through that, I truly believe we can do it. We just have to change the language, and we have to change the model. And I think that's what we're all here for. It's no coincidence that we are all on this call today with such a diverse thinking and backgrounds. And I believe we need more conversations, but I think we're on the right track. I think we're made to believe that this is an impossible task. I believe after COVID especially, people are desperate for this. People need to feel a belonging, a sense of belonging, that they're having impact, that they're connected to people, that there is something more than just this very existence in this 3D plane that we're taught to believe. I think that people are ready, more ready than we think. And I believe that people like us can serve really effectively if we co-create the way that we are.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer very much. I have a daughter, she's 23. She grew up with all of this. So she knows, but her friends didn't. And they all went to business school. So these are business people. She's just starting a new job as an entrepreneur, and healthcare. It's very exciting opportunity. But her friends would be all open to this.
Yeah, and I think it's good for us to really hash some of the boundaries out, because then we also realize how boundary free we can be in this. And I think that what I'll do now, because we're at the top of the hour, is that I'm going to summarize some of the things that we've been saying, and then people can add or comment to that as a wrap up. Does that sound like a good plan?
Perfect.
Because really what we're looking at here is that what we have accomplished today is that we've been looking at sort of a foundational part of discovering the how. Like we're crossing the threshold, and with that, what is it that we want to move forward with, and flags of what might happen that we need to be alerted to, and then of course all these wonderful things that we're bringing over the threshold as we move forward. And some of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit is the necessity of inner work. I mean, that's really central to everything that we've been talking about, that and we can say it in many different ways. And I can see that there are some sort of arms going out from this inner work that may have their own place. One of them is language and how we communicate. And that's something that we're definitely further exploring. Another one that we talked quite a bit about today was values. And I think that my impression of a lot of corporations that I work with is that they get lazy because of their values. They say, well, we already have values. No, it's great. Loyalty, trust, communication, whatever, the top 5 always are. And it's the same for all companies. And it's not helpful. And so I think that that's a further exploration point too. I'm not saying that the becoming of business has to solve everything, but we can highlight areas that are important, that we find from our exploration seemingly important to take further. I'm just taking this in no particular order, but it does sound like there's a huge language shift that needs to happen. And I think that here's actually one place where we can be very helpful, because we, like for instance, Adam was saying from role model to whole model, that just sparks a lot of ideas for people, you know, and there's also something about these values that really come down to, no, we're just people getting up and doing, this is what we get up to, as Dr. Robert Holden said in round one. And so perhaps exploring the agreements that we have with ourselves and around us. We talked about unlearning, which is another arm of this inner work that we need to do. See, there was so much that we talked about that had to do with the inner work, such as the genius leadership that Adam was bringing up, but also this practice. And Sunny kept coming back to this, how anchored you feel in practice. And that's such an important part of this meeting between meaning, purpose, a sense of spirituality, and a sense of authenticity and truth with what we get up to in this thing we call business, you know. I was very excited to hear about nature as a model. And it would be so wonderful to explore that also separately, to see, okay, let's gather some of these models, and it could be the circular economy models, it could be the donut models, but also to really invite nature into the conversation and see what it is, because like Jennifer was saying right before we actually got on this call, we have everything we need.
Sacred geometry, it's all
Yeah.
lies there.
Yeah.
That's where it is. And quantum.
It's all there, you know. Yeah. Oh, don't even get us started on quantum, then we'll never stop. Allyson, you were bringing up these pandemic possibilities, and I think that the whole shift that has been forced upon us is also something, a shift that can truly be a wave, wanted or unwanted, that we can surf, and we can do a lot of amazing co-creation with people that are open now in a completely different way than before. And we can leave any choir talk to the side. We did talk about the current pull of money and numbers as such. And I think that I would personally love if we could have a session on really getting to changes that could be done in how reporting goes back to shareholders. And I know, Adam, you've been on this case before of adding parameters in the way that reporting goes back to the health of the company, to its shareholders, you know. And this can be done, of course, in large companies, but maybe we can also find ways that this can be done in smaller companies, and even for entrepreneurs who are solopreneurs, you know, there's like there's a big lifting up that we are exploring here.
I like to call one return on intelligence rather than return on investment, because if you get a return on intelligence for each individual within their sphere of genius and within their actual role within the business, and we're looking at how we measure and get a return on that intelligence, the profits and return on investment seem to take care of themselves. So again, it's language, right? It's all around language and communication.
Yes, and that brings me to another word that we were talking about a lot in different ways, which is connection. And I think that even though of course, neurochemistry is super important here. There are so many different sciences that help us around the same subject, and spirituality.
Absolutely.
This is where faith actually has a part, I think, in this new wave. I'd be very surprised, and it's not just because I'm a reverend that I say that. Well, maybe a little bit, but it does. I think it's the other way around. There's a reason I'm a reverend, and I think that just feeling into the importance of having a connection beyond yourself is vital moving forward. So we did touch a little bit on that. And in the same neighborhood, we also mentioned rock and roll, which serves mainly the same purpose, right? What else did we talk about? Yeah, I loved something that you said, Sunny. You said, after you mentioned kindness, you said, it's not just an opinion. You're really speaking to deeper truths. We're back to spirituality. We're back to another type of knowing. And that fascinates me to no end, how we could start talking like that in business, being connected with that in business, and trusting each other like that in business. So who would like to put additional words into the space right now, as we are starting our exploration of how the heck are we going to do this in the business world?
Well, first of all, thank you, Linda. It's so nice to be here and meet everybody. And I am going to sign off here. So I want to say thank you. And I also look forward to furthering many parts of this very rich and conversation that we've been having. And I'm also really being very mindful of how I'm attending to the how, because it can catch me in the really masculine push of what wants to get done from an old perspective. So I love that how we're connecting also in the deepening of our why and in the exploration of the how. It's not to say it's inclusive of that. So I look forward to receiving more of all of your wisdom and exploring some more practical ideas, and always happy to receive any connection or calls or emails from any of you. So just want to open that up as well.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for being here with your wisdom and continuing with your wisdom. Thank you so much for that.
That's great.
Anyone else who wants to?
I'm going to sign off for my next call, so I don't mean to leave early, but I must.
No, we're the ones being late now, so you're
Okay.
good. You're good. Much
Thank
love.
you. Be well, everybody. Be safe, and many, many blessings to all of you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyone else that has something that they want to put into the space now? I tried to summarize what we've been talking about. Anything else that comes to mind that feels important?
I think it's very nice to be in a small group. I think this was really good. And I think to use a broader term than rock and roll, sort of the arts, is, I mean, inspiring and inviting. The arts plays a big role in that.
Amen.
Actually, at the moment, for sure, we need to completely, we need to
And it connects beyond self. It's all the things that we really talk about.
Absolutely.
We talked about here. So there's more to say, but I think I'd like to continue this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is going to extend out to so many different parts of the world. I know this is called the becoming of business because that's the download I got and that's the arena where I play. But it doesn't mean that this is not going to be a possible spillover into military, into the reforming of the police that's very necessary here in the United States, of hopefully jacking up the emotional and mindfulness intelligence in Congress. you know. So this could translate into quite a few, and it goes for your country too, Jennifer, by the way. We could say the same thing for sure.
Don't I know it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Who knows what kind of life form this thing's now going to take on, because I'm starting to feel very excited, and I'm trying not to speak anymore before I go off on another trajectory of quantum physics and various different things. So I think all of us would very much welcome the opportunity for you to hold this space for us again, Linda. We're so grateful. Thank you.
Yes, and it was actually Adam that suggested that we do a kind of a speaker series this fall. I think he had perhaps something quite different in mind than meeting in these more intimate settings. And my vision for this was an intimate setting. You know, I've made very little advertisement about it, and I've held it within. It was even so subconscious that most of the people from the Becoming of Business didn't even get the email. I was just like, what? I thought I sent it to everybody within the Becoming a Business. Turned out, no, I hadn't. So just a few. I don't know how that happened, but that goes to show you, you know, what we create energetically is really comes first, you know, and so.
From collaborations to co-creation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Noted that one.
It's going to be so great to have a session on language. Sunny, would you like me to add your email to the Becoming a Business champions?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay, good, because that means that when we have anything like this that I don't put out on LinkedIn, that you will see it.
Oh, yes.
Awesome, awesome. We'll do it that way. Thank you all for showing up. Sorry that we're running over a little bit. I don't know what the timing is moving forward. I just know that we are surfing a wave that will tell us that we should be getting back together before long. So I'd be surprised if we don't have another coming together within a month.
Agreed.
That's just my sense of it, you know. And then I'm a little stubborn when it comes to the Becoming of Business, that I wait for the right feeling of it. And I just thought I would try something new, because much like Adam, it's so easy for me to take out my business push.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just waiting for, and I'm so happy I waited this time, because it really made me sink into a different space. And it also made me meet Jennifer. We've only known each other for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we've already done a couple of programs and panels, and we've been invited to things, and we're comparing notes, and we're discovering with another sister of ours in Australia that we've come to the very same place, you know, of our conviction of consciousness in business. Again, consciousness is a tricky word, but we're going to talk about language, so we'll be better equipped soon to talk about these things in a productive and connected way. How about that?
Yeah, a month seems like a long time.
I know. I was kind of feeling 2 weeks, but I didn't want to scare you.
I don't scare that easily.
I know you don't. I know you don't. It's pretty perfect. Yeah. Yeah, there's something about this writing. So we'll find a good date for everyone. And this is a good time of the day, because it's good for West Coast Europe. Jennifer doesn't have to be up in the middle of the night like when we're on with Australia. Oh, poor thing. Yeah. Much love, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. I will not